call this meeting of the Davenport School Board to order. School board meetings are now open to the public, but the district will comply with Iowa Department of Public Health and the governor's recommendations as to gatherings and social distancing. To comply with the 6-foot social distancing directive, the boardroom has been arranged to allow for 6 feet between attendees. This, however, has resulted in a limit being placed on the number of individuals from the public who may attend in person. Capacity of the room to allow for social distancing is 30 members of the public. Masks are required to be worn in the boardroom, but you may remove your mask if you're speaking. As with prior board meetings, you may access the board meeting remotely as well, but open forum will be in person only. Board priorities and mission statement. Director Klein-Jerome, would you please read board priorities?
The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Director Gosa, would you please read the mission and vision statements?
Mission statement: enhance each student's ability by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Vision statement: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. Got any student board reports?
Sorry. Hi, my name is Sophia Heller. I'm from Davenport North High School. I wanted to start by saying thank you for having me, and it is an honor to represent North High at today's school board meeting. I would like to use my time today to highlight accomplishments and noteworthy things happening at North High School right now. In no particular order, the football team is city champs, 2nd year in a row, so that's pretty cool. The drama club had a great and safe kickoff on Saturday, where students they strike the set, so the spring musical is no longer happening. Students at North High are starting a garden in the courtyard, and we would like to say thank you for the donations from Friday's Fresh Market on Division Street, and then some upcoming events. The National Honor Society of Davenport North High School is having a voter registration drive on the 20th and 22nd for any students that will turn 18 by November 3rd. We would like to say thank you to Auditor Mortz for all her help during that. And then our student council is having a spirit week this upcoming, it's either in next week or this week, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's next week. And so that'll be pretty fun. We hope it boosts morale in the school. And then our North High ambassadors are making videos for elementary school students and middle school students to help them with questions about high school. And since we can't go to the schools right now, it's a really nice way to keep the community going. And then speaking for myself, I would like to say I'm incredibly thankful for the chance to have my senior year in person and not online. And then to all the administrators, custodians, teachers, and anyone else working at the schools right now, thank you for all you do, especially during such a challenging time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board reports. Director Klein-Jerome.
I'm serving on the district PBIS committee that met today to develop the mission and vision statement, and they will be meeting in the near future.
Director Poston.
Karen and I are waiting for a little more direction as far as what we can and can't do as far as concerning the Finance Committee, but we'd like to get moving here and look at some line items as far as budget reduction in the near future.
I have a board report. We had a Director Gosa, myself, Superintendent TJ. AEA and Iowa Association of School Boards had a conference call on Thursday, and as a result of that, we've decided that we're going to create a year-long agenda for the board in terms of the staff development for the board and in terms of those citation items that we need to keep tabs on and get presentations on so we can question them. We're going to have that mapped out for the year so that when we're probably going to meet this week or early next week, and that will map the whole thing out so that the people that are making the presentations have plenty of advance notice so they can prepare appropriately, and so that the Iowa Association of School Boards can know what things are being presented to us when, and so that they can then structure any staff development for us. As you remember, the last staff development we had with them, we got good information on finance and what questions to ask pertaining to finance. So that's the framework we're going to try to set up, so that you will be able to look at the calendar for the year and know that in March, cow is going to be this on the agenda. And the first regular board meeting in April, there's going to be a presentation on this particular topic. Okay? I think it should be beneficial to all of us just in knowing what's on the agenda, knowing what's coming up. That's one item. The second board report I have is from, last week we had a meeting with the city on our MOU concerning our SROs, and we should have that MOU ASAP. The MOU is basically completed. We're waiting before presenting it to the board and the city council until the evaluation piece is completed and fleshed out, okay? And Dr. Klipsch back there is working on that piece. And so once we have the elements of the evaluation piece done, we'll be presenting the MOU to the board. The evaluation piece is a side addendum, it's not contained in the MOU, because that piece may evolve over time, the evaluation piece. Okay, questions about that? Yes.
Yeah, so when you say evaluation piece, I remember when we sort of initially started this discussion, one of the things I had asked for was that the SROs collect data on their interactions with students on a regular basis so we could look objectively at what those interactions were like. Is that what you mean by evaluation?
That's part of the evaluation, right? Correct. Yeah, that's part of that. There's going to be other elements in there too. We're looking at how we're going to evaluate how the SROs are engaged in classroom presentations and things of that nature. So it's a more encompassing than simply I saw this kid, I saw this kid, I saw this kid. Okay. Any other board reports? Director Gosa.
I just wanted to say that I support our new interim superintendent Schneckloff, so that everyone knows that publicly. I'm sure you heard me at the state board meeting, and I will do whatever I can to make our district successful with the citations. But I just wanted to acknowledge this is his first meeting with us, and so he knows that he has my support, and I'm sure everyone else here as well. So thank you for stepping up to the plate and taking this by the horns and getting it done.
We'll now go to open forum. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at board meetings regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees or the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. We have one request for open forum. It's Cindy Winkler. Please give, when you come to the podium, give your name and address, and we'll give you, how much time you think you need, Cindy?
3 minutes. Three? You want 5?
I give you 5. You're a politician, man. You can do 5.
I can do 5. I just want to be, kind to you for having to listen to me that long. I'm State Representative Cindy Winkler, and today I'm coming in as a state representative. Sometimes I come in as a citizen. I live at 630 Court in Davenport. For those of you who don't know where 30 Court is, where 4th Street runs into Telegraph Road, that S-curve, my court is right there. And a few years ago, I had a car in my house as a result of that. But anyway, the house is fixed. We're good. Just a little bit of background. I grew up here, went to Lincoln, then Johnson, then Smart, then graduated from West. My kids went to Lincoln when it was a fundamental school, Monroe, Smart. Our son graduated from West. Our daughter graduated from North. I taught at North for 13 years and was cheerleading coach, and when I come into this building, Victory Wildcat Head was what someone had to wear at the games when I was a cheerleading coach, so that's kind of interesting. My husband, he calls West Brand X. My husband went to McKinley and JB and Central. So I think I have all my bases covered just about. But today I want to talk to you a little bit about when you show growing excellence for every child, I believe that you mean every child. Every child. And sometimes a term like every is misinterpreted as being only for some. But truly, I really feel that you are elected and you know your responsibility in every child. But equal funding is not always fair. We need to take into account the needs of the diverse populations that we have in our district. And I think that one of our strengths in Davenport schools is an inclusive community. And it is important to keep that in mind, but there are some issues that unfortunately have been called to the attention of the State Board of Education in regard to equity, whether it be special education or additional African Americans in suspension and expulsion and that kind of thing. But I don't know how current this is. This is the most current information I could find on the web, but 56% of our school children are white. 19%, and if you add this up, it'll come up, I'm rounding. It might come up to over 100%. So 19% are Black or African American, 14% are Hispanic, 10% are multiracial, 2% are Asian, 1/4% are Native American, and 1/10% are Pacific Islanders. So as I think about the huge job that you have and the creative actions of the staff in this district, I came across this racial equity toolkit. And it happened as a result of paying attention to the forum for our Scott County supervisors. And this was brought up that Dubuque had adopted this, and would Scott County supervisors be willing to adopt it? I know it is for a city, but it is also something that could be adapted. And I think that it is important that we are intentional in regard to our budgeting process. So just at the very beginning, that very first page, ultimately, racial equity is when race is no longer predictive of outcomes. And we absolutely have that goal in our community. We want that to be our goal in the community. And too often, I've jumped down on the document that you have. Too often we overlook racial equity while developing and implementing policies and programs. When racial equity is not explicitly brought into our operations and decision-making, racial inequities are likely to be perpetuated. And then they have, here's the racial equity tool. And there are several tools that are available, and they're mentioned in this document. But I thought it might be a beginning for conversations about how we meet the needs of all of the students in the Davenport School District. I don't often spend a lot of time on Facebook, but there was something on Facebook that really struck me, and I wanted to just say that I don't believe for a minute that the school district or state representatives or city or county government are, this was the quote, are using tools of white supremacy to deny our children their dignity of truth. I do not believe that that is true, but sometimes that is the perception. And something like this, being intentional about budgeting, asking important questions, could change their minds, and it's important that we do that. So if we are not intentional in our actions, there are unintended consequences that occur. And we talk about at the legislative side, and it's used both ways, when we don't think funding is adequate or when we are spending a whole lot and identifying that that is our value. But, you know, you can talk about your priorities all day long, but show me the budget and we'll know what your priorities are. And so I hope that this is a tool that you might use. It's your discretion, certainly, but it might be food for thought as we move forward. And I wish you all the luck in removing all of the negative marks, I guess, I'll use that term, that Davenport School District has received. I think that that in no way shows all of the work that teachers and custodians and administrators and paraeducators do every day. And thank you.
We'll now move to the consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes,
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
is there a second?
Second.
Director Schneider seconds. Is there any discussion? No discussion. We'll move to the vote. Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. The motion carries. We have a motion on the approval of bills. Director Beck.
Mr. President. Excuse me. Sorry, my page scrolled to the wrong spot. There we go. I move that the board adopt the following resolution recommended by the administration for the adoption of the bills from the bill listing periods of 9/26/20 to 10/7/20. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of September 26, 2020 to October 7th, 2020.
Is there any discussion? Was there a second?
Second.
Who seconded?
Second.
Director Hayes seconds. Discussion? Be no discussion. We'll move to the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. The motion carries. Superintendent report.
Thank you, President. Before I get started, I want you guys to know I've never felt more conviction towards a task than the job assignment that I am currently in. I can't guarantee you much, but I guarantee you this. We are going to work as hard as possible towards the citations for our students, staff, and our community, because that's what they deserve. It's going to be our focus, and you have my word that that's what we're going to do as we move forward. And so I want you to know that I've had the same conversation with our administrative teams and our central office teams, and the overwhelming response that I get back is, what do you need? Where can I pitch in? And every conversation I've had with every school board member has been the same exact thing. So I want you to know the overwhelming pulse that I have heard is like, let's get to work. How do you need me to get this work done? I'd like to start with a statement that was prepared for the school board, and you'll see at your space, many of you have had asked questions, and I've had an opportunity to answer some of your questions during these uncertain times. But this statement prepared by Amy Williamson and Dr. Lebo and her team, I think will help some clarity in these issues, and any questions that you continue to have, I'll continue to gather those and get further clarity in this very uncertain time. The State Board of Education is now directly overseeing the implementation of the corrective actions in the district plan, and the acting superintendent and chief financial advisor report directly to the State Board via the Department of Education. This will continue as long as the State Board holds authority over district operation pertaining to the corrective actions, which is set for an initial period of 6 months. The Davenport School Board will continue to meet and perform regular functions that do not relate to the corrective actions, such as authorizing unrelated purchases, reviewing student achievement data, reviewing financial statements monthly. The local board will continue to hear information about and be actively involved in the corrective action plan, but will not approve actions or expenditures related to the plan. The local board will continue to create their own agendas, and agendas will be reviewed by the Department of Ed, AEA staff, along with TJ prior to each meeting. Items that are not subject to local board decision making will not be noted as such. And you can see many of the questions that you had are here. And if your questions aren't there, then I felt like they were answered in some of our conversations. And if you do not feel they were answered, let me know and I'll make sure that they are answered. There are a couple of things I'd like to update you on. First, our CFO, the situation that we've been directed. An initial search was done by Mr. Decker from the AEA, and he reached out and talked to each one of the people on the list, and as suspected, there were no candidates that immediately could come and work with Davenport Community School District. And so it's a thumbs up to the people on this board as we were on the right track. The situation that we have right now has just been elevated. So Gary Sinclair is going to act in the role of Chief Financial Advisor and continue to work with Lisa Cruz as the CFO, and that has been approved by the Department of Ed today. And so that's a tribute to you guys in moving in the right direction in that way. Effective immediately, we are going to post for a CFO position, and we're going to begin the process of finding a new CFO. The preferred method would be to go around the state of Iowa and do some recruiting and find somebody that knows and understands Iowa finance and can be able to come in and immediately take action. And that's the direction that we're going to head with that. The second big rock that we've been working towards are the citations. And so very fortunate to have Shane Williams, who's here with us today. Actually, I'd introduce both of them. Bill Decker's in the back. He's the chief administrator at the AEA, for those of you that do not know him. And Shane Williams is one of the main administrators at the AEA. I don't know his specific title, but they're both a part of the team that's helping guide the citations in Davenport. And I will say that over the last week, we've done a lot of calibrating with Dr. Lebo, Amy Williamson, and Shane and Bill. And so through that work, like I said before, Bill has been working diligently on this, on finding out what we can do for the CFO. And then Shane has been working with members from the Department of Ed to review our citations. And all of our directors had put information into our citations. So they've really been diving in and digging in to find out what are the #1 priorities that Davenport should move forward with. And unequivocally, it's it's the portion of our citations that are crisis response violence prevention. To use some of Shane's words, which I think are coming from members of the Department of Ed, we have not shown the ability to have simultaneity in our district to have multiple things being implemented at once. So we're really going to get down to focusing on one thing. And through there, the dashboards will be created that you will review through training with IASB, that administrators will have. There will be outcomes that we're constantly watching to look for success in our district and completion of those citations. So the citation narrowing is still in process. Shane has put together a one-pager with members of the Department of Education. Now I want to clarify something. There are things on there that we can continue to work with, like the development of our evaluation process. That can continue to happen. But how it rolls out is what we need to really make sure that we are not overwhelming the system and doing two things at once that cannot be done really well. I think that's the direction that we've been given. Okay. Bill and Shane, do you guys have anything that you would like to say before moving forward?
Thank you, TJ. I would just like to make sure that there's an understanding, much as you heard TJ express, the AEA is committed to partnering with the district. We are committed to getting those citations behind us as quickly as possible. We are committed to using that process to help the Davenport district come out to be an even stronger place than we would have before. So we're not trying to work just on citations, we're trying to work for the long run. And that in the work that I've been working on in the past week or so, the CFO conversation is one example of that. Trying to put something in place that will extend and allow some continuity so that the district ends up in a better financial place for a long period of time. Shane Williams will be doing the same thing in working on the program side. And we are very, we wouldn't have necessarily, I don't think any of us would have picked to be in this position. But since we are in this position, we are just wanting you to know we are absolutely committed to helping you put this behind you as quickly as possible. And we'll get better together.
Thank you, Bill.
I'll just echo the same sentiments, and that way you can put a face with a name. We're eager for this partnership. Ultimately, our goals are twofold. One is to put those corrective actions behind you, but then the other major goal is to put Davenport on a path to sustainable improvement. TJ's shown a great deal of commitment. There's a great partnership with the Department of Education. So now we need to identify those high leverage actions that can both simultaneously hit those corrective actions and also put you on the right path for kids, teachers, the community as a whole. So looking forward to getting started. The last week and a half have been a really steep learning curve, but I can tell you that the enthusiasm within the district that I've seen is one of a sense of urgency and just shines a light on how critically important this is for all the kids. So thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Will you shut that off, Shane? Oh, thank you. So our first citation that we're going to begin to attacking will be our crisis response violence prevention. And on the sheet, the citation sheet, there are names associated with every one of the citations. And in this citation, Dr. Klipsch and Corey Guy are going to be the two facilitator leads. And over the summer, Dr. Klipsch and myself had a community meeting and put together some work. So that work was vetted. Shane took that work to the Department of Ed and said, what are your thoughts on this? So this week, we are hashing out exactly how we're going to roll that out, our plan for rolling that out. What does the staff development look like, and what are the accountability measures or success criteria look like for that? And then we can share that with our weekly meeting with the Department of Ed and the AEA. That's our plan for this week. You heard Director Poston talk about the Finance Committee. We've had a brief meeting with Gary Sinclair. We're setting up a workshop, and we're going to begin our light item budget process. and looking forward to moving forward with our finance committee. And I'll send more information about that tomorrow morning. So I apologize for not having that information to you this week. I know we had a discussion about that, and that's on my to-do list, and I will get that done. And my conversations with Gary have been very positive. He's right now budgeting down to the penny. And when he comes inside of our district and reviews everything that he needs to see, we'll have a very clear picture of what does the future hold for us in our finances. And I think that with Director Poshin and Director Klein-Jerome being directly involved in that, I think it highlights how we can move forward in a very productive manner. I never seen anything like that return to learn work. And there were board members on every single one of those committees giving input right on the spot and reporting out structure at this meeting. So I think that that's going to be a very positive way that we move forward during this time and allow everything that we do to be vetted but still have input. And so that's my related report to our current situation. I also wanted to share something unrelated to that. Today, we are going to start posting our COVID numbers to the website. So on a Friday, we're going to gather those numbers, and they'll be updated on Mondays. So parents and community can see, and then that way they can make decisions what's as best for their family. So that concludes my report, President.
Questions? Director Beck?
Yes, I have two questions, unrelated to each other. Number one, so Gary Sinclair has been in our employ already, and I guess I'm trying to figure out what's different now as opposed to before, because he was helping us with our budget already. Mm-hmm. So what is different?
So Gary's position was elevated. So we had a contract to do work with Gary. Gary's been elevated to a chief financial advisor. He could not be the CFO, and we fulfilled the CFO role with Lisa's position. But in terms of Forecast 5 giving us reports that we can utilize, now Gary is a part of our team, and he's helping make decisions. So let me give you an example. One of the first things Gary wanted us to do was put on a hiring freeze. And so we put on a hiring freeze. Now, we have categorical positions that we've budgeted for. So we got on a call with Gary, had a great conversation of how to move forward. I would say the main difference is that he's now a part of our decision-making team. Now, in order to do that, that contract needs to move to the AEA. And that title needs to be there to be our advisor. When he advises us of something, we will do it, and we will move forward with that internal with Lisa's people and our people. So I would say that those are the main differences between his role in the past and how he's moving forward. He's actually a part of our decision-making tree when we spend money.
Okay, and then my other question. Oh yeah, so. First of all, I appreciate you posting COVID numbers. I know we've gotten a lot of public comments about that. I guess my question is twofold. There had been some information that the state recommended that districts not do that, which for our district, generally, we follow those recommendations. Mm-hmm. And number two, I guess there had been some privacy concerns, particularly if numbers are very low. It seems like it could be an issue. You know, if you've got one person, I was talking about this with somebody else, with my husband. If you've got one person out sick in your classroom, we both teach college, and you get a report that there's one case of COVID, well, you put 2 and 2 together, right? So I guess that would be my concern. Now, I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are, so I don't know if that's an issue or not.
So there were state recommendations, and we crossed the threshold of that recommendation. So we are now in the recommended area of sharing those numbers. Okay. And so the numbers are, you would be very proud Karen, of our mitigation strategies that are in the district. I think last week, and don't quote me, I've got a lot going on in this brain of mine, but it was 6 students, 6 staff members for a district our size. And so that changes from week to week. The work that's happening in our health and safety committee, we're constantly updating, following trends, sending that out. And we need to come back and revisit some of our health and safety concerns in that issue. So in that area, because just like anything, we need to stay on top of that. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. I guess I still wonder about privacy, but I do want to make sure that everybody understands that we don't contact trace, correct? If somebody has been exposed, it is the health department.
Correct. The health department does the contact tracing, and we're only going district-wide. So our numbers that are going to be reported are not by building. They're going to be district-wide.
But I mean, if a parent hears that there's a case in their building, they can't call the principal and find out if their kid was exposed. They will get a call from the county health department if there has been an exposure.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Director Poston?
Going back to Gary Sinclair, then what input will Karen and myself has as far as the finance committee? What kind of involvement will we have, and what kind of involvement will the board have with Gary Sinclair?
So I'm going to answer this the best that I can. So Gary, your involvement, just like anybody else's involvement in terms of a committee, is that you would be a part of that committee, and that committee would make recommendations. So if you're a part of that committee and you want to see this, that, or the other, then that would be a spot where your voices could be heard in any committee. So your involvement in there will be the ability to suggest, listen, relay. The ultimate authority right now lays with the State Board of Education. And so that's where we can have our influence. Gary Sinclair will give regular reports to this board. I think it's very important that whatever we had scheduled, and that's going to be coming up with the scheduling the entire year out, that those regular reports still be given to the school board.
Karen?
I did look at how it's posted, the COVID on the website. I appreciate it. I think it's very transparent. I appreciate it. I'm sure parents do too, because I heard from several after the last board meeting when I asked about this. While you and many others are focused on the citation, life goes on in this district. Is Rob taking care of that day-to-day stuff while the rest of you are working on these citations? Because things will come up and need to be addressed. Is that how that's working?
Absolutely. So I want to make it very clear. I am the superintendent of this district right now, the interim super. So any actions that need to take place, any decisions that need to take place are still occurring. I'm not here in some other fashion than that. So when a crisis happens, I'm still involved in that crisis.
Okay.
When the decision making happens, I'm still involved in that. I am your acting superintendent. And yes, the idea that things need to come off this plate to make sure that those citations happen, yes. And I've been calibrating with every single one of the directors to do that. And we are making adjustments to make that happen. And I want to tell you, I can't be more proud of the professionalism of everyone sitting around this room. They're ready to go. And so whatever needs to come off the plate to do that, I am very confident that it will continue to happen. So the day-to-day operations will be taken care of. And so when you think of this position and this time, that's where I like you to think about it. I'm still here, I'm still overseeing the district and things of that nature. So.
Okay. Thank you. And then the last is, I know we have no say in approving it, but is there a way we can know what the cost of hiring you, the AEA, Gary Sinclair, is going to cost the district? I mean, I understand we don't get to approve it, but I'd still like to know what that's going to do to our budget.
Absolutely. And I think in my conversations with Gary Sinclair that would be part of that would be a line item that we would have to create.
Okay, thank you.
Director Gosa?
For all the extra additional cost, is there a way that we can go to the SBRC for the spending authority for those things? Or can you get us the answer for that?
I can get you the answer for that.
Okay, thank you.
Director Beck?
Sorry, one last question. I know that the corrective action plan, we're not decision-making or approving there. Are we going to be allowed to, or are we going to be given regular updates so that we can make sure that we are aware of what's happening and participate in sustaining these changes down the road when the ship has been turned?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Director Poston?
You may have already mentioned this, but who is taking over your former duties?
So I've evaluated those duties in this time, and we've kind of spread them out, but the interim director of learning supports is going to be Dr. Klipsch. So those transitions are happening right now. We've also had to shift some responsibilities off of Rob's plate in order to make sure that these citations can take place. So Bill's going to be supervising and evaluating the elementary principals again, and in managing the implementation of the citations. Our citations are being directed by our state and our leads, but we have to be able to carry those out and manage the day-to-day duties. So those are the two shifts that are going to be happening to help make sure that all that work is being done.
Thank you. Move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion on 8.01?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes?
I move the board approve the application to the SBRC for the modified supplemental amount in excess of the LEP Limited English Proficient Program in the amount of $1,298,188.50, or as determined by the Iowa Department of Education following DE audit review, in order to provide 100% spending authority for 2020 actual ELL program costs.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Snyder. Discussion? Director Beck?
I know that I ask this question most years just for the sake of people tuning in for the first time. Can you explain a little bit about what modified supplemental amount means, and the fact that it in the past has been sort of a almost a rubber stamp, but not quite, and that it's money that we have to spend, but we also have to ask for the authority for it?
So were you wanting to just say that's how it's done, or do you want me to say the same
Can you
thing?
explain a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, Lisa, will you take the lead on this one, please? But well done.
Thank you.
Director Beck.
I will try and explain. So this is the costs that are incurred. We get to spend pretty much what we need to spend for those children in the ELL program. The state gives us about $600,000. And so we ask the SBRC for these extra costs. This is for the students in years 1 through 5.
And a follow-up question would be, and this one might be one that Mr. Schneckloth could answer. Why is there a mismatch between what the state provides and what we end up spending? Do we have a sudden influx of students, or is this just sort of...
In these areas, similar to special ed, we don't know what's going to walk through our doors or the needs of students, and this process allows us to give the students what they need and go back and ask for it. So you're exactly right with your explanation earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Director Snyder?
When will we be going to the SBRC, and how long does it take to get their answer on the approval?
It's my belief that we get that spending authority in December. So that will actually, we ended up with a positive unspent balance at the end of June, so that around 700,000. So this will be added on top of that, so we'll end up about $2 million.
Thank you.
Director Gosa?
Just for clarity, are we good to do this because there is a state board member that has points out all the time about the SBRC doing things for us. So I just want to make sure we're not going to make that person upset that they're going to mention it more than they do at every meeting. I want to make sure we're doing everything right.
Yes, this is standard operating procedure for districts.
Thank you.
We'll move to the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. May I have a motion on 8.02, approval of the Lexia contract?
Mr. President,
Director Beck?
I move that the board approve the Lexia contract in the amount of $228,237.50.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Any discussion? Director Beck?
Just confirming that this is just continuing the reading software that's already being used. We're not changing anything. This is just the next renewal cycle.
Yes, you're correct. It's
Thank
a continuation.
Director Snyder?
My question is a budget-related question. It says the date of the contract is 12/1/20 to 6/30/2022, in the amount of $228,000. So, is this $228,000 for this year's budget, or is it spread out over the 2 years?
So, are you going to answer that?
It would be spread out over the 2 years. It would start in December and end in 2022.
No more questions. We'll move to the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. May I have a motion on 8.03, approval of Recover Health Iowa contract?
Mr. President,
Director Beck?
I move that the board approve the contract with Recover Health of Iowa for $100,000 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. I want to clarify something. You may notice that initially in the agenda it was $75,000 for this item. It's now $100,000, and that's a result of when it was $75,000, there was 3 students to be serviced, but now it's $100,000 because there's a 4th student that needs to be serviced. Any discussion?
I was just going to
Direct-
mention, oh, sorry.
Director Klein-Jerome?
My concern is on the cover page, the date of the contract is 7/1/20. We are now October 12th, so it concerns me that I am voting for something that's already been in place for 3 months. And I brought this up multiple times on multiple contracts. I want to see this stuff prior to it being implemented, or at least a whole lot closer than 3 months after the fact.
Can we clarify that for us? Dr. Schmidt.
I think that Director Klein Jerome brings up a very good point. This will be one question I'll be asking in the morning. But there is a little bit of give time that we need to know which kids are actually coming to school in the fall, who we actually have that will need nursing services. But the timeliness of it is an excellent point.
Dr. Beck? Dr. Beck?
And I just wanted to clarify that this action item and the next two are all expenditures for students who require in their IEPs specialized nursing services. So these are not dollars that we have discretion over.
Exactly. Yes, that's correct.
No questions. We'll go to the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. We have a motion on 8.04, approval of Unity Point Health contract.
Mr. President,
Director Postian?
move the board approve the Unity Point Health contract in the amount of $55,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Gosa. Here I'd like to point out also that there's a change in this one because it was initially for 3 students and now it is for 2 students. Any discussion on this item? Seeing no discussion, we'll move to the vote. Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. We have a motion on 8.05, approval of policy.
Mr. President?
Who that?
Me.
Director Beck?
The policy committee recommends that the board approve changes to policy 903.19, complaint procedure.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Discussion. We'll move to the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, the motion carries. We'll move to discussion items.
Bruce. I forgot to mention something. It's okay. I just forgot to mention that this is really a name change for this policy, in that we're talking about a change in who to talk to if you have an issue.
We're now moving to discussion item 9.01, policies. These are policies for discussion, and I will allow Director Beck, Chair of the Policy Committee, to conduct the discussions.
Okay, so as you all know, we are currently reviewing all of our policies with an eye to adopting the IASB language and numbering system for the most part. But before we do that, we do have some things that had to be taken care of right away, because that's kind of a long-term project for the year. So these are the ones that have come up so far, and we are ready to discuss them. The first one is 6.0208 and 405.05. These are curriculum evaluation and professional development. So for now, we're keeping the Davenport district numbering system. So you'll notice some notes on there that say keep keep DCSD numbering for now, but eventually these will all have new numbers that are more consistent with the IASB numbering system. So with this, this is just sort of standard language that we regularly evaluate the total curriculum, and that the superintendent and superintendent's designee are responsible for curriculum evaluation, and then this provides us the framework for looking at the curriculum as a board. We're not evaluating specific items. We are evaluating the framework for the curriculum. And we put in language that we would like to see some of this at least once a year. So I'll entertain any questions. Hopefully I said that properly, Corey. Okay, so you can expect to see that come up for its second reading at our next meeting. The next one is a new policy, and it fits into a group of policies on harassment and discrimination and bullying, which we'll be talking about tonight. So we have a new policy on discrimination and harassment based on sex, and this is pretty standard for any large entity, and it's been approved by our HR director, and it's getting a new number because we don't currently have a number or a policy that matches this right now. So this is just standard Title IX discrimination and harassment based on sex prohibited. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. Oh, I forgot 40145. Okay, we'll get back to that one in a second. All right.
Allison, I have a question. Do we have policy on discrimination, harassment without the based on sex? Do we just have a policy on discrimination and harassment?
We have a policy against discrimination and harassment. What we don't have is there's a lot of overlapping language. So this is a policy against discrimination, harassment based solely on sex, and it's a part of Title IX requirements.
But we couldn't combine.
We do
them.
also. It's not recommended.
Got it.
To combine them, but we do also have separate policies on harassment that's not sex based, but it hasn't. It's not recommended that we combine them.
Okay.
Excellent question. Okay, so 401.45, sorry, I forgot to talk about that one, is on professional development. This is basically just replacing the content with language that fits with what's actually being done and with IASB suggested language. That we do support professional development for staff and teachers as part of a well-rounded workforce, and as consistent with best practices, and that we will support that with funds, but we have a framework in place for employees to request reimbursement for those types of activities. So again, just updating the language to IASB language, and putting in anything that's specific to us. Okay, so then we have item 401.42, which is our anti-bullying and harassment policy, and this has been the subject of discussion for quite some time. This is one of the policies that actually fell under our citations at one point. because it was not easy for a person to file a complaint. And so what we are trying to do is make sure that it is very easy and we are transparent. And so we have adopted IASB language for that policy, which is recommended. And we have adopted we would like to adopt the complaint form that you see in your packet there. This will be made available on the website, and I believe it is up there now, if I'm not mistaken. The new one's not up there yet. The new one's not up there yet. We have to prove it. We have to prove it first. That's right. Anyway, so this is the complaint form that the IASB recommends, and it fits well with our attempt to really gather more data and be more objective about how things are going in our district, because it allows people an opportunity to mark off the category that their complaint or categories might fall under. And so we should be able to track more easily the types of things that people are complaining about. And again, we're trying to make it very easy for somebody to make that complaint if they need to. There's also a witness disclosure form. And then what I think is perhaps the most important is that there's a disposition of complaint form that follows, which closes that loop. So it demonstrates and it documents that the complaint was duly investigated, and whatever the resolution was is actually documented in a form that goes into that file. Questions? Okay, so our next one is the equal education opportunity policy. And this is another one that we had sort of a lot of the same language, but it wasn't particularly well organized. So we are putting it into a more organized format. You'll notice that the people in charge, or who we address these complaints to or issues to, are highlighted very large, Mr. Woods and Ms. Weinzerl. So we also have required an annual notice of non-discrimination. This is standard language that any large public entity has. And then a continuous notice of non-discrimination. This is language we're required to report. We have been doing so. Again, this policy is just reorganizing the language in a manner that's a little bit more coherent. And this also includes the Section 504 student and parental rights. So this is equal educational opportunity, but it does not include IEPs. That's a separate type of complaint. So, but it encompasses a lot of the things that people might have issues with. And then the grievance procedure is part of it. And also we have that complaint form, again, essentially looks the same, but it is looped in here. So another way for us to make sure that people know that we are paying attention and able to follow through. All right, and then finally, we have the equal employment opportunity policy. This is IASB code 401.01, same number as we have now. And this is very similar except that it is basically language that we will not discriminate in employment, so equal employment opportunity language, and that we will have an affirmative action coordinator as part of that policy. So again, a little bit of overlap. Some of the language is very similar, but these are technically separate parts of the law.
Do we currently have an affirmative action coordinator?
Yes, we do. I believe it's Jabari Woods. And we have approved him We approved him last year. I believe we approved him this year as well. So we have had an affirmative action coordinator. But part of what we're doing here is hopefully making that more apparent that we actually have somebody in that position, and making it easier for people to find that person. Other questions?
Thank you, Director Beck. And these items will be on action items then in 2 weeks on our agenda. Board reports. 2. It's a light day. From Board Member Gosa, agenda item, I would like a presentation on how the transition process has worked for the students and staff at Keystone. I feel this will be very useful to the board to receive an update so we know what the process looks like and what supports are being used and if this has been working well. Do we need to add more supports or make the transition successful? It says as soon as possible, as soon as reasonably possible. Is there a second?
Second.
From Director Beck, information request.
Oh, I flip-flop things, so read the bottom first.
Okay. I would like to see the enrollment numbers, building capacities, and costs of maintenance and operations of our schools. We are likely to have to close or consolidate attendance center in the near future. We need to get ahead of this decision-making so that we can make the best financial decisions and ones that are the most equitable for our families. Once again, as soon as possible, when feasible. Is there a second?
Second.
Director Postian. Administrative reports.
None at this time.
We have no administrative reports. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.